Welcome, 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 everybody, to the You've Championed Yourself, Who Are You podcast. I'm Chris Ferguson, and I'm your host. And I have always dreamed to be able to showcase people who have championed themselves, who have taken their dreams, ideas, and turned it into their reality. As they reach beyond their personal struggles, pains, and traumas, so many people give up. They lose hope. There are a few who can walk through their obstacles and challenges, not knowing where it's going to take them, but they trust themselves enough to not give up. They go and do the follow up, the follow through in their personal life, their careers, and their relationships. They have championed themselves. My guest today is an amazing individual. He's the light in anybody's life that gets to know him. And I'd like to introduce you to Garrett Duncan. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. Let's do this.
Okay, awesome. When you started out on your journey in life, what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome that helped make you become you?
One of the bigger things that I definitely give a lot of credit to is, of course, my parents, and also the heritage in which I grew up on, which I was raised with. So I'm embodying in this current time, Indigenous from the Navajo Nation. So living there on the reservation and being in those conditions definitely assisted me with preparation as to who to be, where to be, and who to become. So this is something that I definitely, in the early onset of my upbringing, having that as a foundation, but also, seeing and embodying and living and knowing all deep down that there's always going to be a better way.
I love that because it's seeing beyond the here and the now and knowing there's something better, and it's just reaching that. And I get that message, and everybody that I interview seems to have that same understanding, which I think is it's so important in life. When you started past your journey and doing the things you wanted to do, how did you get in touch with your sacred masculine?
That was something that was always part of the tradition. It was always part of the cultural upbringing. And so with the Navajo tradition and the spiritual practices, we've always embodied and we're aware of what I refer to as the sacred masculine, and they call it the warrior. So the aspect of our being, they call it in Navajo, Neya, which means protection ways, the warrior masculine part of our being. And it was always in alignment too, in harmonization with the divine feminine, which is the nurturer, the mother. And that is part of the blessing way teachings. And so this awareness, knowing that we had to, I guess, go about our daily lives in awareness of this. It was always about awareness, but what it really came down to, amongst the people was embodying it and being it and living it. And so that's where the challenge with these traditions, with this teaching, was always a challenge for a lot of the people, a lot of the males, the men of the tribe, because the idea of warrior, right, back in the day, of course, was about always defending the people. But now we're in the 21st century, right? So in the 21st century, this idea of warrior, who are we? What is our function now? So that's something that I believe has been very difficult for a lot of the masculine, for a lot of the men of the people, because they don't have their roles. They don't have that support of what the initial tradition and the practices were about. So it's something, to me, difficult, but growing up amongst it, knowing that it existed, that it was there, that was where, for me, it was more or less this, again, going back to what I shared before. It was always knowing that we could be better, do better, always do better. Like, be better than what you're seeing, be better than what you are doing, be better than what you are living in. The environment down on the reservation is not the greatest. So it was something that was, early on, we faced that the awareness around survival was about having to discipline self to do better. So this is, again, something that definitely very strongly walked away with.
I'm just feeling that a word there was becoming a survivalist.
Yeah.
Because of the conditions, because of the dynamics. And a lot of people don't make it.
That's correct. That's correct. So I would say that I consider myself, being my family, very lucky and fortunate. And that's where, again, I give gratitude and appreciation for my parents for doing their best to raise us. And down on the reservation, there are a lot of problems with this awareness, with the theme of survival. There's a lot of drug usage, a lot of gangs, there's a lot of domestic violence, also with alcoholism. So alcoholism is something that runs very rampant on the reservation, and it creates a lot of disruptions and problems amongst the family units there. And so it was almost, survival of the fittest, so we had to really embrace and learn how to embody the warriorship very early on, in the upbringing. So it's not just play, but also doing what we needed to do to survive.
And that's what I love about you. That's where I see you've championed yourself in doing this. Your family did that. And I honor so many people growing up out west. My father's Native American, so I understand it. I didn't live on a reservation. I didn't experience those. I had other experiences, but I honor all of those on all tribes, all nations who are able to surpass these obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I really, really wanted to interview you on this, because it just embodies the heart and the love and the determination to want to get beyond this.
Yes.
And not allow other things to hold you down.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, go
I was just saying, again, that's where I give a lot of credit to the tradition, because the spiritual practices are there, the ceremonies are there, the prayers are there. And it's one thing to say a prayer, but it's one thing to be the prayer, another thing to be the prayer, I should say. And that's where that challenge, where a lot of the people go awry with the traditions, in my observation, they go awry because of what I call the temptations. It's like there's a lot of temptations. It is easier to go into escapism, right? To escape out of the problems, out of the reality of what they are facing, by going out to the nearest bar or going out to the nearest store to get a drink, right? To escape. And so, unfortunately, yes, a lot of the people reverberate to this escapism. And that is something where, when I realized that, oh my gosh, this is, it's rough, the awareness and energy of this victim mentality, the victimhood of a conquered, right? Of a conquered race, of a conquered tradition. And that's where in this day of age now, the awareness of resiliency, resiliency has been very, very predominantly in my vocabulary in the last few months. So that's why I'm more or less reminding the people to be resilient, to be in their strength, to, yes, embody their warriorship from the more sacred masculine principalities.
Have you noticed that in recent years, that attitude changing, more people reverting back to their traditional ways? Because most people don't realize that it wasn't until 1974 that Native Americans were allowed in this country to practice their spirituality. Yeah. There was actually an act saying they couldn't. It was actually a crime for them to practice that, even though the rest of the country had freedom of religion and could do anything. So are you seeing that transition recently in the last 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of growth in that regard, and more or less reminders to really practice these ways. The ways were always there, and of course, I'm sure they were done in secret and in non-awareness, to protect the sacredness. And yes, just in the last 5 years or so, there has been, to me, just in my observation, a lot more increasing in returning back to the more purity of what the initial tradition and the initial prayers were all about. And so right now, it's kind of like a lot of the younger generation are looking, yes, same thing. It's like I can speak on that level because I was that person. And it's like we have those prayers, we have those songs, but we gotta embody now in the more 21st century way. Like in 21st century, how do we bridge, how do we merge the two together?
I think with you in their awareness, and this is why I wanted to showcase you today, is so that we can get this message out to everybody, not only Native Americans, but also white, to understand that this is something that's sacred. It's not just a fad or having to go to church on Sunday. It's a lifestyle. And most people don't realize that's how deep it goes. That's the core of it. It's a lifestyle. It's just like the Irish and their traditions, or whatever you do. It's the lifestyle. So the one thing I want to talk about or ask you about is, and this is my favorite subject, star language.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Okay, so where do we go from this?
How did your star language get activated? Well, one, explain to everybody what star language is.
Yes, so
how yours got activated.
This is something that has come into my awareness fairly recently, only within the last 5 years. And star languages, I should say, when I get asked the question, Garrett, how many languages do you speak? And I always rebuttal, on Earth or universally. And they're like, well, star. And I'm like, look up in the sky. How many stars do you think there are up there when you look up at the night sky? So there's really, it's hard to really put a number and the structure and rigidity of how many languages are really out there. And the languages come in all different sizes, forms, tonalities, and it's sort of difficult. Well, I should say it is difficult to answer that question. It's like, well, how many? Well, it just depends on how many embodiments I've had as these lifetimes, in our multidimensionality. So these languages are in existence, are in awareness. And when I had said Earth, there are a lot of languages that had come to Earth initially when this planet was first colonized. So what the Star Nations have shared is that when the planet was first colonized with several different star groups, for example, such as the Pleiadians and the Sirians and the Orions and the Andromedans. And the Andromedans are the most local galaxy that is pretty much next to the Milky Way. So there are different star systems within those forms, within that galaxy. And so when the Earth was first seeded, these colonies were established, and they brought with them different templates. As I was informed, they brought with them different templates to assist with the creation of how Earth is to be. So like the plants, the different animal kingdoms, the different minerals that were grown. And so they each contributed, their understanding and also their energies to go about seeding the planet. And so in that awareness, that's where a lot of the Earth languages do have star derivatives, like they are derived from these original colonies that had come down to be here on this planet. And in this awareness, that's where that's where I was given awareness from a Lakota elder that as I was speaking Pleiadian, I didn't know I was speaking Pleiadian at the time, but he kept asking me the question, how do you know our language? And I'm like, what language? He goes, how do you know Lakota? And I said, I don't know Lakota this lifetime. He goes, but some of the words you're saying are Lakota. And I said, well, this is my understanding. This is connected to the Pleiades. And I said, don't you remember in your stories that you have the earth deity goddess, White Buffalo Calf Woman who came from the Pleiades, from the Seven Sisters. And so that's where he made the connection, like it was a big aha for him. And so this is where now, on the earthly level, going back to the sacredness and going back to the original, like the blueprints of what was. And now we're in the future generations, we're in that reemergence, I guess you would say, the reemergence of the various forms, the various languages that are coming into conscious awareness. And so this is what right now, many of us who are awake and aware, we're being prepared for this, because we are moving into more of that galactic human, where a lot of us do have these embodiments, had these multidimensionalities as Pleiadian, as Sirian, as Orion, as Andorian, as Andromedan. So all we're doing is harnessing and re-accessing those memories in a more conscious form. And so this is one of the awarenesses right now with regards to I guess you would say the role that I'm in, is to help the more human individuals remember these memories, regain access of these memories so that they are able to speak these languages openly in a more conscious way.
I love that. I love that. And I have to tell everybody, I know you personally, so I understand that. I don't want everybody to think, well, how does she know all about this?
Yeah. And it was, like I said, I've only been speaking these languages about 5 years ago. But what happened was back in 2017, when I was attending the Psychic Sasquatch retreat at that time, connecting in with the Sasquatch peoples. That's where I was taken aboard a ship with 4 others. And we were basically given access back to these memories. And after we came back into earthly awareness, these languages started coming out. So it's okuyatan. It just wanted to be released, and that and get comfortable with relaying, the tonalities, and embracing this star aspect of my being comfortable with that. So the challenge has been, of course, is like, okay, well, people are gonna think I'm crazy, but but I surrender to it anyway. And then now so now it's like they're saying, oh, now they can't get him to be quiet.
But the thing is star language, anybody can speak it. Once you understand and resonate with the language, anybody can speak it. It's not just reserved for natives.
Correct, exactly. Because what Star Nations have shared is that a lot of us have had these incarnations in our multidimensional aspect of our being. So those memories reside within us, and it just takes that, I would like to call, flipping of the switch, turn the switch back on, and now you're openly, consciously communicating them face to face, out loud, expressive tone, clicking, however it is that the first mother tongue, as I call the mother tongue, is the first language that comes out. And the mother tongue is the first language that helps train and get the more human vessel, the more mind aspect of our being to get comfortable, to be comfortable. So a lot of us have these star origins, because if you ask yourself the question, you look up at night and you feel this energy or this yearning to return, more than likely you've had a lifetime as a different star nation, so different aspect of the stars, and so or different planetary, coming from. So there are a lot of us here that already have these encodements. And one of the responsibilities and jobs that I am doing right now is to provide support and to get everyone to remember those languages too, in preparation collectively for the intergalactic human that we're becoming.
Since you've broached that subject, there's many people, the government are saying, we don't want to talk about UFOs. We don't want to talk about aliens. We don't want to talk about those things.
Right.
But they're already here.
Exactly.
I don't think they trust humanity enough to understand that they're not going to freak out. But the more they keep it a secret, the more that they keep it as a conspiracy theory, they draw more attention to it. But there's those of us who know that they're here, they're interactive, they work and walk among you.
Yes.
It's just being able to, I don't know, be open-minded enough, get in tuned. Are those the right words, Garrett, to understand that they're here, that what you see, those spaceships going into the sky, that entity that's up there and it just is gone in 0.015 seconds, those are actually, they're checking us out. They're feeling how we're reacting.
Yes. And that it's about the conscious awareness. So when I say conscious awareness, that means that I can speak andesta ekeku. I can speak consciously. Aku ateadakan. Now relaying communication in this form. Consciously. Uku akan deeti kistu yotan eratastanda. So to envelop, like to really bring that remembrance. Remembrance, to unify. So this is where consciously speaking in this regard, openly, right, communicative, however the languages are relaying themselves. And so awareness wise, and this is something too that, yes, the indigenous all across the earth, not catered to here in Turtle Island, but the indigenous all across the earth, they've always had this awareness, because that's what it really comes down to, is the awareness that we're not alone. We never were. That we've always had helpers. We've always had these principalities and philosophies and different variants of tradition, that these helpers were out there. Whether or not they could see and identify these helpers, that's a whole nother story, right? But at least acknowledging and knowing in their awareness that it was there, because the intuitive part of our being, that resonance of who we are, that's something that we're born with, that we always have access to this. And so in this awareness that we're, I guess you would say, in a lot of the more shadow side of things was about control. So wanting to control and not allow the beautiful human expression the best that it can be, and so hence you go and try to suppress the indigenous wisdoms, take away traditions, because they know on a bigger, grander scale that there's something to this, something much more universal, much more galactic, much more greater in expansion than you can even explain. And so but a lot of the times that's why too the star nations always connect in with indigenous, because they know that deep down in the core that the bloodlines as well as the lineages are there to support this interaction. And so what's happening right now, collectively speaking, is a lot of individuals who do have and carry indigenous blood DNA, they're waking up even more. So their intuitive selves are expanding.
I love that. I love the fact. And I remember, I love history. And that was one of the things that even back in the day when natives, this was their home before it was invaded. As the white people saw them and just started to call them heathens and different things, because they were different than them. They weren't socialized. And the natives talked about their sun family or their sky family or star family, I think is the correct term.
Mm-hmm.
And this put fear. And I think a lot of times since traditions in their countries, they had the abilities to do it back then too, but they use fear to control.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you look at a lot of the ancient artwork now, the petroglyphs, or else you look at some of these ancient artworks like the clay pots, you'll see that these depictions of how they depicted to their best know-how from that time, a lot of these visuals look very much out of this world. They don't look human at all. They
Well,
look
no, but they also resonate up to the sky. It's not like they're just existing here.
Mm-hmm.
My next question to you is Star Children.
Oh, yes. Why we're here.
Yes.
Many of us. So what's, again, going back to the preparation and where we are and what we're moving into. So in this next phase of humanity's history, right, present day, as we move into the more galactic human, the more society surrounding unifying. That was a big thing that came in, was unification, unifying, unity. So we're unifying and bringing all the different colors, the different spectrum, the different visuals, the different frequencies and vibrations coming now to embody more as this collective, communal collective, unified galactic society. And a lot of the kids nowadays, a lot of young ones, they've already been premed, they're already prepped from a more genetic side of things, from a more energetic, universal, before they incarnated. So again, it's like, all right, all it takes is for that one person to speak to them in Star, and then boom, they're open. They're like, oh, my people, I see you. I'm like, uh-huh. So a lot of the Star children of today are in this awareness, but they're needing the support, because since we're in transition from the outdated reality, right? Reality, moving into the more communal and unified collective, that's where in this transition, a lot of the Star kids are being bombarded with what they thought was reality based upon principalities of their parents and how they're being raised. So the parents have a lot of hard time understanding that these kids are not even from this planet. So that's why they don't care about certain things. They know their missions, but it's like, oh, mom, yeah, no. The very old soul. So sometimes they come off very judgmental, because they know deep down in their core that they've done this work many, many, many times. And here we go again. So we just got to remind them, hey guys, you're here to be a kid. Don't grow up too fast. It's all right. Let us be the ones to hold the fort down for you,
But that's been the tale of forever. I mean, I remember hearing when I was a kid, hey, don't try to grow up too fast. Enjoy what you have, because you don't know what you're walking into.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I had another question, and I'm trying to think, because we were talking about you were talking about Sasquatch.
Yes.
What do you think? Have you ever heard of, well, not necessarily Sasquatch, but have you heard of the Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah.
I want to go there, Garrett. I want to go there. I want to go there.
Okay.
And I know, but because of your lineage with, I believe, the Ute, it was cursed. The land was cursed, is my understanding. But they don't understand portals.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand frequencies. Can you talk about frequencies for me?
Yes. So the this particular area, it's funny because you asked this question. I was just asked this at the retreat last week, at the Sasquatch retreat. They're like, what do you know about Skinwalker Ranch? I'm like, oh, here we go again. It's like, well, definitely again. So this is the more shadow side of the tradition when it comes to the Navajos and Southwest tribes and the affiliations there. So these beings, I'm just going to refer them to as such. These beings are very much in existence. These beings are very much in part of the game. These beings are very much in control by other beings, and they were put in place again as a control mechanism from a more energetic side of things to instill fear. And this is something too, growing up among the Navajo Nation, I've always kind of realized and disagreed with certain aspects of the traditions because the taboos, especially, were control mechanisms. You know, grandma would say, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't do this, you just don't do that. Well, why, grandma? Why? Well, now you just don't ask questions, okay? And so it's like, it was always an instillment of fear. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So this is where that part, the shadow side of the tradition, is catered around these beings and growing up amongst that. And so these beings are being controlled. They are being controlled by others, and they are sent out to do certain things. Okay. Now, this particular area, and again, when I tuned in and asked Star Nations what's going on here, because someone else, again, was curious, they shared with me that there is a base in Nostoma Asteriakara. So this base that resides within the deeper core of that particular part of Earth. So I believe it's in Utah where this ranch is. Right. So Otan, there's a base there. And this base is housed by some of the controllers. I want to refer it to as the bad guys, Eokoshtara. And they deliberately built this base. This base has been there for a long time, even before the government got involved. That's what they told me. And Dutan Teresesara. So they shared that it was built on a vortex. It was built on a portal, Terikiekera, and in order to harness those frequencies, the natural energies that were coming in from above, but also vibrating out from below. And when I say below, I mean inner core of Earth, because there's crystals down there. And we have the one-hearted ones that reside within Earth. So they're utilizing that frequency, those energies that are beaming up and then beaming down. And there's the base. So now we get to do all sorts of experiments and play around. So when you guys look at the show, that's why their compasses and their EMF readers and everything are going crazy. And like, oh, there's no real strong direction as to where, oh, well, I step in here and I step out of here. So, but it's not pointing down. It's not pointing up. It's just like circling. So this is where the instruments are not relaying this electromagnetic spectrum in a more precise way. But deep down, buried underneath, that's where all this frequency is coming out. And it's a space, all they're saying right now, space of manipulation. So they're doing a lot of experimentation. They've been doing, I should say. They're probably not doing it a lot more because you have the lighter side of things that are coming in now because there's a lot of awareness with this. There's a lot of talk around it. They're telling me right now, Star Nations are saying that it's also too a lot of genetic manipulation. Creation of creatures. So if you guys are familiar, the movie that comes into mind is The Island of Dr. Moreau. So where they create all those weird oddball creatures and genetic manipulation, that's what they're sharing with me. So that's probably why a lot of those beings are around that area, because that's where like they're primarily housed.
One of the theories that they say, how I guess history has been portraying, is that back in the day when the white people were coming here and conquering the lands, the Navajo and the Ute were very close. And the Ute turned on the Navajo, and that a Navajo medicine man cursed that land. And ever since, the Navajo cursed that land because of what the Ute were doing against the Navajo. That is why all of these things are happening. But I do love this show. I do watch this. I don't watch any other TV but this show. And they're finally trying to figure out that it could be a porthole. There's a couple old houses there, and one of them, they put like thermal imaging there in that. They took a spectrum camera in through there, and inside this house. They could not get any readings in the back room. It's like they never even walked in there with any of their equipment. My question to you, because of the frequency levels, is those frequencies levels even on the same level as what's in that house?
It's higher because
right, it's
a lot
interfering
more,
with.
It's higher, and it's also even to the point where it's very dangerous for the human body. Because when there was one episode too that I happened to see, and when I saw that thermal imaging, I saw also too within that person's body, it was like a radiation. So it was causing a disruption in the natural rhythms of the physical. So these people who are exposing themselves to that area, they're being infused with this more radiation type of frequency, and they don't realize that they're causing harm on their body. See?
There was one individual there that had an anomaly happen to him, that every time, the thing is every time they dig there, something bad happens as far as energy rates, levels, frequencies. And this one guy, I don't know if you've seen it, but his scalp came off of his skull and created a severe medical issue, and he was hospitalized for it. And then another one had just by opening like a septic kind of lid, was exposed to radiation and just started developing like radiation burns on his face and his hands. So again, I just wanted to see what you thought about it and what it was about, because I want to go there. I think that me, you, and several other people could show these people that this is not something to play with. It's, I mean, they're trying to understand the phenomenon. I guess the government for so many years were trying to understand it. They found some core rods, and that's where they've hidden those away instead of trying to explain them to everybody. So I was just like wanting your opinion on that.
So when the Star Nation shared, first they want me to get this out because they said that what the energies also do, they said if you have pre-existing conditions in the body, so meaning that if it's just a small little thing, they're saying that if you go into that frequency, it's going to magnify that to where it would become more of a detrimental physically. So when they say pre-existing, meaning that we have stuff going on that we don't know, right? And so that's where that vibration is so amplified that it will amplify what you got going on physically. So that's what they're telling me, that he already had like a condition, some type of condition around the nervous system, but also the blood. They were saying his blood anomaly is showing me that I think it's called sickle cell, because it's the little, so something going on there, and so that's why it just caused the separation. Like, you know, wasn't the normal round blood cell, it was those abnormal, so it magnified that. So that's what they're sharing. That's why it's like there's real caution about exactly if you really want to do this. I'm like, okay. So now I understand why Grandma says, okay, you don't do there, you don't go there. Don't ask me why, but I know something. So that part of the tradition I can understand now in correlation to this specific area around this ranch, because it's like, don't go there because we know bad stuff happens. If you go there and you're not supposed to, you're only harming yourself, right? So that I can appreciate. Now, the next part with regards to what Star Nations are sharing is that this base, as I mentioned, so this base that has been there, built by the rogues, as they refer to them, they're just called the rogues. So these are the more shadow side of things, the controllers now. There are technologies that they have harnessed, that they were given, that they have abused, because when the government came into contact with Star Nations, that were like, we're coming to you with open arms and we want to, you know, create this beautiful, peaceful society. And government's like, oh, well, give us, and we're going to take, and then we're going to da with it and use it the other way around. So that's what, when you mentioned the rods, I saw this technology where, yeah, those rods are probably mined from our own minerals here on Earth. Right. So they're probably plutonium and uranium, all those typical high level radiation level, you know, frequencies. And so again, that's where the more radiation is correlated to that specific area, because now they're using it in a different way. But if this vessel is not primed and is not prepared to handle those frequencies, then it becomes more detrimental.
I think that what I was feeling is I was feeling that it was time to make peace with drumming. And when they see that people are coming there, and I think it's the energy inside the person. If you go there and want to find peace and drum, you're not going to have any issues. If you want to find out, or if you want to continue doing things that are for personal gain, it takes on a different frequency, because it's like turning the dial.
Yep. And that's going back to what you mentioned about the curse. So a lot of the cursing and all that fun stuff, as I call it, the shadow stuff with the tradition, it's all about personal gain. It's all about, jealousy. It was always about, oh, they're doing better than me, so let's go ahead and create harm and havoc because they have something much more shiny. And again, this is the shadow side of the tradition, when I knew it was like, this is dumb. Why are we playing this? Everybody should appreciate and love each other. It's like, here we are growing up with the shadow side of the tradition. And it's like, you don't talk about it. Okay. Grandma says you don't talk about it. You don't mention this. You don't talk about it outside the society. So that's why a lot of times, when I hear that word, it's like, uh-oh, here we go. Do you really want to go there?
Exactly. So the fact is I was just interested on your take on that. One of my other questions is, why do you consider yourself innocent? I'm just asking.
We're all innocent. So this has to do with one of the many roles / responsibilities / embodiments, whatever you want to call it. Reminding everyone that we can all be in our clown form, right? The Lakotas call it the Heyokas, right?
Yes.
So the depiction of working in resonance with the Heyokas and this energy of being in that inner child, in that expression of curiosity, in the expression of the joy, and the expression of that innocence, of that purity. Because when a baby is born, they're already in there naturally. We're already in that space. But then they're born into trauma, right? Automatically already, genetically speaking, mom and dad came together. Yes. So already traumatically, they have these traumas that they have within their blood, within their genetic, within their DNA lines. Okay. And then from there, as they continue to raise up and grow, if mom and dad didn't do their work, then now they're projecting more and more trauma. So there goes that innocence, and there goes that purity, and it comes into victim, and it goes into putting the child behind the scenes or not acknowledging the child. And all I know is hurt, pain, aches, scars, whether it's physically, like physical abuse, or emotional, all that. So this is what we're here to move beyond, to transmute, to clean it up. A lot of this work, this is where the ancestral DNA part about being. So this reminder to be in that innocence and the return to purity, to return back to our pure form, that's beginning of a lot of healing for many individuals. So it's just like, okay, I'm going to clown around and let's remind you, hey, I can either, tickle you with my feathers, or I'm going to use my feathers and be like, knock it off.
I just had to answer because I love laughing with you, because it's so funny. It's so releasing. It's so energetically raising.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize that laughter heals so much.
Yes, it does. That's why that seriousness, it's like, I always, I see people praying and they're really sitting there praying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, come on. I see too many serious faces. Allow yourself to smile, because when you do that, the prayer is going to be a lot more magnified, because you're being in that higher vibrancy. There's the frequency, it raises.
Yes. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Garrett, I want to thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I just absolutely love you. And I tell you, I love you all the time. And I do, from the hearts of hearts.
Thank you.
And with that, it has been amazing. It has been so much fun. And I can't wait for this to air. I'm so excited.
It's time.
Yes, it's time.
Yes.
With that, I'm going to say, have a great day, many blessings, much love, and have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.